Reesha, and I always loved the great outdoors. 3 years ago, I got my dream job as a seasonal park ranger at Yellowstone National Park. I was stationed in a remote area near Shoshone Lake, responsible for patrolling backcountry trails. In the beginning, it was very peaceful, just me, the geysers, and the pine forest. But there is a silent, creeping darkness in these old woods that the tourists never see. The locals call it the hunger, and I never believed it until one cold evening in late September. It was exactly 7:30 p.m. and the sun was quickly disappearing behind the jagged mountain peaks. I was finishing a solo patrol along the seldom used trail, known for its dense trees and ancient rock formation. The air was still, and the usual sounds of the forest, bird song, wind in the leaves, had completely vanished. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that made my ears ring. The Yellowstone woods have a strange energy at night, as if the entire forest is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The internal park radio on my shoulder started to crackle with a loud static noise, breaking the oppressive quietness. I picked it up, trying to check in with the main ranger station west. "This is Reesha. Can you hear me?" I asked, my voice slightly trembling in the fading light. There was no answer, only a faint, distorted stretching sound on the other end. Then a soft, distant child laughter whispered clearly through the static. "Catch me if you can." A sharp chill ran down my spine, as no children should be in this remote section of the park after dark. I grabbed my flashlight and pulled out my service weapon. Feeling a sudden need to investigate, I walked deeper into the thick pines, my footsteps echoing loudly on the dry needle floor. The park's old analog trail cameras followed me as I moved, their little red lights blinking like angry eyes. I looked up at the ceiling of the forest and saw the black, twisted branches blocking out the sky. As I reached a small clearing, the air became noticeably colder and smelled strongly of sulfur and old decay. The tall pine trees were dense and narrow, casting long, distorted shadow on the forest floor. I looked at the small black and white monitor of a motion-activated trail camera mounted on a tree near a creek. The forest was grainy and filled with analog noise, looking just like an old VHS tape. I saw a figure standing perfectly still among the distant trees, facing away. My heart is hammered against my ribs as I realized the figure was unnaturally tall and thin. It had impossibly long arms and legs, stretching high above the bushes. Its skin was smooth, pale and grey, blending with the shadow of the forest. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was just a trick of the low light and the old equipment. But when I looked back the screen, the pale figure was still there, staring directly into the camera lens. It slowly raised its hand and pointed toward me. Pure cold terror washed over my entire body. I looked back into the dark woods. The clearing was empty. I was alone. I spun around quickly, shining my flashlight beam into the thick brush, but no one was there. I looked back at the trail camera monitor and my blood ran cold. The pale creature was now standing right in front of the camera lens, occupying the entire frame. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle and its face was a smooth, empty void. When I shined my flashlight again toward the location, I did not see the creature at first. Instead, I saw my own reflection in the still water of the creek nearby. But something was very wrong. My reflection was looking back at me with wide, terrifying eyes. But behind it stood the pale figure. I spun around quickly, but the clearing was empty once again. I looked back at the water and my reflection was finally alone, but the silence in the forest had become deafening. The reflection in the creek water started to ripple independently, reaching its pale, elongated hand toward the surface. I tried to back away, but my feet felt like they were frozen to the muddy ground. I have been waiting for you, Reesha. 1,000 voices whispered from the water in the metallic tone. The surface of the creek began to ripple like thick syrup, and the entity started to crawl out of the reflections and into the real world. Its limbs were unnaturally long and thin, and its skin looked like matte, synthetic flesh under the moonlight. I finally found the strength to scream, but no scream came out of my dry throat. The doppelganger was now halfway out of the water, its sharp black claws digging into the soft muddy bank. It had no face, only smooth grey skin, yet I felt its ancient and hungry malice directed at me. I realized this thing was a mimic, a predator from the ancient woods that lives within a park's shadows. It wanted to take over my life and leave me in the darkness of the forest forever. I swung my heavy flashlight at the creature's empty face, but it passed right through it like made of thick smoke and shadows. The creature laughed, a sound that was a distorted version of my own laughter, echoing off the canyon walls. I turned and ran back toward the trail, but the familiar path had vanished, replaced by dense, unfamiliar pines. The pale figure stood up, its tall, thin body reaching the tops of the trees. It moved with jerky, unnatural steps, like a broken puppet. I scrambled toward the narrow rock crevice, hoping to hide and find a way out onto the main road. Behind me, I could hear the scratching of its long claws against the pine bark. This is no escape from Yellowstone, Reesha, the voices whispered, coming from every corner of the forest. I grabbed the large rock and threw it at the trail camera, hoping to break the connection. The camera shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces, and for a second, the entire forest went silent. However, the silence did not last long, as every single shard of glass on the forest floor began to glow with a pale light. Each tiny piece of the trail camera now showed a small version of the creature's terrifying face. 1,000 voices started to whisper my name at once, creating a deafening, terrifying noise. The shadow in the clearing began to rise and take the shape of the pale figure surrounding me in the circle. I felt cold, invisible hands grabbing my arms. The last thing I remember seeing was the Slenderman standing over me, looking perfectly human once again. It adjusted like its park ranger uniform and brushed its hair, looking exactly like the Reesha who had started the patrol that evening. It picked up my keys and my radio, moving with the grace that I never had. It looked down at me with its faceless void and whispered, "Thank you for the life." Then everything went black as I was pulled into the cold, empty void behind the shadows. The next morning, the search party found my patrol car empty near Shoshone Lake. They checked the park's analog trail cameras and saw footage of me walking calmly back to the station at dawn. The woman on the screen looked normal, but she had a strange, unhinging smile that never faded. She waved at the camera and vanished into the crowded visitor center, never to return. The real Reesha was trapped forever in the woods of Yellowstone. If you visit a national park, be careful what you look for in the dark. This is Horror Wink United States. Subscribe for more horror and horror stories, and don't forget to comment below. Thanks for watching.